Joining me now is the Aviation Minister, Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia. Mr. Scindia, first of all, many congratulations to you.
Thank you.
I'm just seeing the reactions which are coming in on the social media timeline and other reactions coming in. The thing with Air India is that there's always been an emotive factor which has been, kind of attached to it. That it's a national carrier. It's been there for years, and we are letting a national carrier go. There must have been a substantial amount of political pressure also not to take this call, but you decided to go ahead and do it because at the end of the day, what really matters is the survival of an airlines.
So the question being?
The question is that, was there political pressure, and did you then think that...
No, Pallavi, just think about it this way. At the current state of affairs, the loss of Air India was 20 crores a day. That means 7,200 crores a year over the last 3 to 5 years, which means 35,000 crores roughly, which has been pumped in to keep the airline afloat. On top of that, you have a debt overhang of almost close to about 50,000 crores. That's 70,000 crores together, 85,000 crores. Add to that the equity infusion by GOI over multiple years of close to about 32,000 crores. So you're talking about a figure that goes into over 1 lakh of crores. Now, at the end of the day, it is the responsibility of government to most efficiently invest taxpayer money. And for my department in the Ministry of Civil Aviation, to look at the interests of the ultimate customer. I am not the Minister of Air India alone. I'm not the Minister of airports alone. I am the Minister of Civil Aviation. And therefore, my ultimate stakeholder is my customer. And therefore, this transaction has been a historic one. It's been a landmark transaction. I wish the new owners all success. 85% of the bid, as you're aware, has been will be the debt that will be transferred to through Air India to the new owners. 15% will be the equity that they will pay upfront to the government of India. We have moved the rest of the debt into an SPV vehicle. And we will have also moved all the other non-core assets of Air India, movable and immovables together, buildings and such, real estate, other assets into the SPV. And we will look at monetizing that to offset the debt. So I think it's a win-win situation for the sector, for the customer, for industry, and ultimately for every stakeholder. And under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, all ministries have come together to work with industry to make sure that this is a successful transaction. So through you, I'd like to also thank all the stakeholders who have been involved in this process to make this transaction a success.
But Mr. Scindia, many are criticizing it as a fact. I'm not talking about this deal, but the fact that this is a Nehruvian legacy and this is something which really should have ideally happened a long time back. We also know that there have been previous attempts to try and disinvest Air India. They've not been successful. You think there has been substantial delay? Ideally, this is something which should have happened earlier, but no one, your predecessors could not do it.
I have always said this, that we will spend the rest of the day and the next 24 hours all night talking about the past and legacy. We have to live in the present and be committed to the future. The only comment in the present is that this is a transaction that has been widely applauded by one and all, every stakeholder, from industry to arms of government to former vice chairmen of the Planning Commission, to customers, to stakeholders. And it was about time, because government cannot go on spending money to keep an airline afloat when there are many more demands on government funds for social sector and infrastructure projects. And therefore, from a government point of view, being customer-centric, i.e. taxpayer-centric, you also have to see where will the funds give the highest rate of return for your customers, i.e. your taxpayers. And if you put on that lens, then this is a transaction that really needed to happen. So therefore, I think that from 130 crore Indians' points of view, this is something that everyone applauds. And I wish, as I said, I wish the new owners all success from a strategic point of view as well. I think the industry today will have 3 or 4 carriers with a sizable fleet strength. So you have an Indigo, with close to about 270 planes. You'll have a Tata Group with, again, a close to about 240, 250 planes, along with the 141 that have been transferred in this transaction. You have a SpiceJet with close to about 100 planes. And so therefore, you have core capacity coming in at least 3 or 4 carriers. And I see hopefully, as we slowly come out of COVID, some reassurance in terms of the economics of this sector also emerging. There are a lot of building blocks that we are trying to put in place in the last 3 months to make sure that this sector is also becomes a viable sector. We will talk about that another day with you, such as talking to states about lowering ATF, trying to put ATF under GST and all of those other steps. But suffice to say that this will certainly be a very important positive harbinger for the sector as well.
Okay, and there were other players also, and there were many bids by others as well, but Tata won. And I saw that very emotive ad which came in from Ratan Tata and Tata's very extensive statement. Why were Tatas chosen? I know they have a track record of excellent work done in various fields.
The process was very transparent, Pallavi. You had you had an EOI that was put out. You had a transaction mechanism that was put in place. You had professionals that were guiding the transaction process. You had bids that were put in. Based on those bids, you first looked at the technical parameters, and you did not open the financial bids until the parties passed the technical process. Once both the parties had passed the technical process, then you also worked on the reserve price. Based on the reserve price, then the financial bids were opened. Fortunately, both the bids were way above the reserve price, which is a very good positive sign. And then the best bid won. So a very transparent, very positive process that has yielded in the transaction going through.
But it's not going to be easy for the Tatas also. And, apart from the huge losses that they're facing, it's a question of a mindset.
I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you, Pallavi.
No, people do talk about mediocrity. They do talk about, when you're competing with now Indigo or Vistara for that matter.
No, let me finish. Yes. Let me finish.
Yes,
I don't completely agree with you, because if you look at Air India as it has been transferred, it also has a tremendous, apart from the 141 planes, yes, you do have a huge amount of liabilities that are being transferred, but you also have a huge number of assets. You have routes, you have parking slots across the world, and I think it's up to the new management to be able to make a success out of Air India. And as I said, I wish them all the very best.
And there's a concern that about the existing employees of Air India, are they going to be retrenched?
As far as the employees are concerned, very clearly, we have put in a huge amount of safeguards in the transaction document itself, specifically 5 safeguards. Number 1, their job security and continuity of employment is guaranteed for the period of 1 year. Number 2, in the event after the 1 year expires, the new management decides to let go of a few people, there must be a VRS process that is put in place that is obligatory and mandatory. Number 3, Air India residents will continue to stay in their residential colonies for a minimum of 6 months, or the divestment of that non-core asset in terms of the immovable property, whichever happens earlier. Number 4, there will also be an ESOP scheme within the new Air India for employees, close to about 3% of the share capital of Air India. That is mandatory, that will be put in place. 5, as far as Government of India is concerned, we will still guarantee the Provident Fund and transfer them to EPFO. If there is any cost with regard to that, that will be paid by Government of India and not by the employees. 6, all the post-retirement medical benefits of current and eligible employees will continually be paid by Government of India. And finally, 7, Justice Dharmadari Commission had come out with a report of with regard to payment of retirement dues for employees. That is guaranteed by Government of India and will be paid by Government of India. So there's a full package to put in place employee-related safeguards for the current employees of Air India, both on the side of the party that has won the bid and on the side of government.
So 2 quick questions before I let you go. One is a criticism which is already coming in is that, what this government is doing is selling off the family jewels. Couldn't it have been handled better? Couldn't you have made Air India as a national carrier a profitable venture
So,
rather than selling off?
let me just answer that by saying, I just want to ask these the prodigal questionnaires who always come up with the what if question. Uh, uh, would they be answering the taxpayer by telling them that they would be putting 7,500 crores into a loss-making airline uh, uh, for continuity? Is that something that you as a taxpayer or I as a taxpayer would support? I think if you look at the reaction of the common man on this transaction, everyone is applauding it. And I think it's about time that the opposition also looks at a nationalistic view as opposed to just a opposition-centric point of view. And let me also say this, that it is also the opposition that were auguring for a divestment of Air India. So I think it's about time that you don't change your language depending on the seat that you're sitting on.
And also, Mr. Scindia, the fact that you're going in for the privatization or disinvestment of Air India, does it also indicate that this government, the Prime Minister, reposes faith in the private sector?
Obviously, please understand that in today's global environment, government has to work with the private sector. Government has to work with stakeholders. And this process and the iterative nature of this process that you have seen over the last year and a half, very clearly signals to the world, not only to our citizens in India, but to the world, that we are a collaborative government. We are a government that believe in listening to all stakeholders to identify the path forward, and we have to do it together. It is not government and industry or government and citizens. We have to work together to make a success out of any policy or any movement that we want to see to bring about economic growth in India.
Ms. Scindia, I'm just going to let you go with this last question because you just told me you're going to go ahead and inaugurate an airport at Sindhudurg. See, the advantage which Air India has over the other private airlines is its access to even the small sectors. Are we now going to look at that change in the aviation sector from an emphasis to say from Mumbai, Kolkata, Delhi, Bengaluru to say a Gwalior or say Sindhudurg and smaller areas? Is that what's going to be our next focus?
That has to be, Pallavi, you're dead on, you're bang on. And that has to be, please understand, what is the penetration of civil aviation in India today? We have 144 million flyers in a country of 1.3 billion people. So you're talking about close to only 10 to 11% of our population today fly. Just look at the fact that we are today at the tip of the iceberg. That growth is going to be phenomenal. It is going to be exponential. And that growth is going to come from your spokes, not from your hubs. Delhi already is at 70 million people. Bombay already is at about 45, 50 million travelers. Bangalore and Hyderabad are also inching up there. So it is going to come from a Darbhanga. It is going to come from a Ripsu in Assam. It is going to come from a Jharsuguda in Orissa. It is going to come from a Sindhudurg. And establishing infrastructure there today and providing connectivity through Prime Minister's vision of Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik, what he has envisioned and asked us to follow as our credo and our mission, ki Hawai Chappal wala bhi Hawai Jahaj mein ude. That is what is going to be possible in the years to come. We've seen that happen with Udan, where close to about 1 crore people have already traveled through the viability gap funding process that we put in place from the central government, state government, and other ministries. And you're going to see an explosion of travel happening from the spokes to the hubs. You're going to see not only your Indigos and Spice Jets and Air India and other airlines, but you're going to see the regional airlines emerge. The 25-seaters, the 50-seater jets, the ATRs. That's going to give your reach all the way down to the hinterland. And the very fact today that a rail travel beyond 12 hours is more expensive than a 1.5, 2-hour flight ticket. So therefore, the 2-hour flight ticket is cheaper today than a second AC rail fare. That's the competitive environment that you're going to look at. Today, you have close to about 141 million people that travel on airlines and 187 million people that travel on second-class AC. The difference is second-class AC is growing at a CAGR, compounded annual growth rate of 5.6%. And air travel is growing at a CAGR of 10.4%. So it's going to be a matter of 4 or 5 years where civil aviation travel numbers are going to be way beyond second-class AC travel in this country. And for us, the responsibility is to provide that penetration into hitherto unmarked territories on the civil aviation map and provide those opportunities for instantaneous travel to our citizens. Thank you very much.
I have to ask you this question as a consumer, as a passenger. I'm speaking for many others. I'm looking at the airfare, say to Kolkata, it is huge. Are you going to give us a reassurance that with more players coming in, Air India coming in, these prices will start coming down? Or one last quick question.
Well, that depends on the market. Also, don't forget that air turbine fuel costs, Pallavi, have gone up 300% from $20 a barrel to $60 a barrel. Please understand the structure of the industry. Air turbine fuel is close to about 41% of the revenue structure of an airline. And the cost and revenue structure is pretty much the same right now because airline companies are bleeding to the extent of almost 19,000 crores a year. And therefore, if you have VAT on top of that and excise duty on top of that, you're talking about a cost structure that is extremely prohibitive. So for me, the important thing is to make sure that the cost structure becomes leaner for airlines and therefore providing connectivity into the hinterland. Therefore, I'm pushing for states to reduce VAT on ATF. Therefore, I'm pushing for the cause of ATF to go under GST. Because at the end of the day, this is no longer an elitist form of travel. It is the common man's mode of travel from the length and breadth of our country. And that is what my responsibility is to ensure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scindia, for joining us. So that was just the first interview of the Aviation Minister, Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia, promising better flying days ahead. Thank you so much for watching.